The story of the Titanic is a legend known around the world. It began on a cold April night in 1912. The grand ship, called Unsinkable, hit an iceberg and sank into the dark waters of the North Atlantic. More than 1,500 people lost their lives in the freezing ocean. The tragedy was immense, a moment that shocked the world and became a cautionary tale about human pride and the power of nature. For decades, the ship was more than just a wreck, it was a ghost. It rested somewhere in the vast, unexplored abyss, a silent monument to a night of terror and loss that no one had ever seen since it vanished beneath the waves. The Titanic was not just any ship, it was a symbol of a bygone era, a floating palace of luxury and technological ambition. The stories of its passengers, the wealthiest industrialists to hopeful immigrants, became part of our collective memory. These personal tales of bravery, sacrifice, heartbreak were passed down through generations. They kept the memory of the Titanic alive, turning a historical event into a powerful myth. The ship itself, however, remained lost, its final resting place a complete and total mystery for over 70 years. What secrets did it hold in its watery grave? These questions haunted historians, adventurers, and the families of those who had perished. The deep ocean guarded its secrets well, making any search seem nearly impossible. The Titanic was somewhere in a massive, dark, crushing environment, 2.5 miles below the surface. Locating it was a challenge that many believed could never be overcome. The ship was gone, and for many, it felt like it was gone forever, a permanent fixture of legend, rather than a physical place that could be visited. The ship's disappearance left a void that people tried to fill with stories, movies, and books. But without seeing the wreck itself, the full story felt incomplete. An underwater tomb that held the final, silent chapter of a story everyone thought they knew. The desire to find it was not just about solving a puzzle, it was about connecting with the past and finally seeing the truth of what happened that night. The search for the Titanic was more than a treasure hunt. It was a quest driven by a deep and powerful curiosity about our own history. For decades, many people dreamed of finding the lost liner. They were drawn by the challenge and the promise of solving one of the greatest maritime mysteries of all time. The idea of being the first to see the Titanic since it sank was an incredibly strong pull. Many tried and failed to locate the wreck. Expeditions were launched with high hopes, but the vastness of the ocean always won. The search area was huge, and the technology of the time was simply not up to the task. These failed attempts only added to the Titanic's mystique. It seemed as if the ship was destined to remain hidden forever. I was one of those people. The story of the Titanic had captured my imagination as a young boy, and the desire to find it stayed with me throughout my career as an oceanographer. It was a personal quest, a dream that seemed to call out from the depths of the ocean. This powerful lure to find the lost ship was about more than just scientific discovery or fame. It was about honoring the memory of those who died. The wreck was a gravesite, a place of immense historical and emotional significance. Finding it meant being able to pay respect to the victims and ensuring their story would never be forgotten. The search was a mission filled with purpose, driven by the quiet, unseen pull of history itself. In the decades following the Titanic's sinking, the idea of finding the wreck was mostly a fantasy. Early proposals to find and even raise the ship were floated. They were more like science fiction than serious plans. One notable early figure was Jack Grimm, a Texas oil man with a flair for adventure. In the late 1970s, Grimm began funding searches. In the early 1980s, he funded further expeditions, 3 in total. He used the best available sonar and spent millions on the quest. The missions generated major media attention. Grimm's efforts, though unsuccessful, proved the search was now a real, tangible goal. He claimed to have found a propeller. He also reported other possible targets that were never confirmed. The failures were frustrating and costly, showing the scale of the challenge. The deep ocean was harsh and unforgiving. Finding a single shipwreck in that vast, dark expanse was a monumental task. My own story in the quest for the Titanic began long before the 1980s. This led me to a career in oceanography at Woods Hole. My work there wasn't chasing shipwrecks but advancing deep-sea science. I focused on developing new technologies, remotely operated vehicles, ROVs as our eyes and hands in the crushing darkness of the abyss. I wasn't a treasure hunter driven by fame. I was a scientist and a naval intelligence officer. My approach was methodical, using ocean dynamics and cutting-edge tech. It would open a new era of exploration, studying deep-sea vents and other historic shipwrecks. Titanic was a stepping stone to unlocking the deep ocean. The opportunity came from an unexpected place. the United States Navy. Early 1980s, the Cold War was still real. The Navy had lost 2 nuclear submarines in the Atlantic in the 1960s, USS Thresher, USS Scorpion. The Navy worried about the Scorpion's nuclear reactor. They also worried about its nuclear torpedoes. This led to a secret bargain. The Navy agreed to fund the expedition, with a condition. My primary mission: find the USS Scorpion. Their offer: complete the Scorpion mission, and if time remained, use their resources to search for the Titanic. It was a deal I could not refuse. With the secret deal in place, my team and I had to create a believable public narrative for our expedition. We presented the 1985 expedition as a joint French-American oceanographic mission. I teamed up with my colleagues at IFREMER. They had their own advanced side-scan sonar system called SR, ideal for the initial wide-area search. Every interview I gave and every press release we issued focused exclusively on the historical and scientific importance of finding the Titanic. This cover story worked perfectly. The world's attention was fixed on the Titanic. No one suspected that our deep-sea technology was actually being put to the test for a classified military purpose. While surveying Scorpion, I saw how ocean currents distributed debris. The sub had imploded, leaving a long, comet-like trail on the seafloor. I realized you don't search for the ship, you search for its debris field. A debris trail is a much larger, easier target than a compact hull. That was the aha moment that changed our strategy. After completing the Scorpion survey, we focused on the Titanic. We had only 12 days left, a race against time. My strategy: ignore the last known distress position, and search for the trail of debris. We would look for the ship's footprint, not the ship itself. The star of our show was a revolutionary new vehicle named Argo. It wasn't a submarine that carried people, it was our eyes in the deep. Argo was designed to fly about 100 feet above the ocean floor, scanning a wide swath of the seabed with its powerful cameras. This was a game changer. Instead of looking at fuzzy sonar graphs, we could see the ocean floor in real time, as if we were flying over it in a helicopter. Alongside Argo, we had its smaller, more agile companion, Angus. The plan was to use Argo to find the debris field, and then deploy Angus to create a detailed photographic mosaic of the wreck itself. The search itself was a grueling, around-the-clock operation. Hour after hour, the view remained the same. Maneuvering the ship to control the vehicle's path was like trying to fly a kite in a hurricane while standing on a moving platform. As the days ticked by, the mood on the ship grew more and more tense. We were more than halfway through our allotted 12 days, and we had found nothing. The thought that we might fail was a constant presence in the back of our minds. We knew that if we didn't find something soon, our chance would be lost forever. Just before 1 o'clock on September 1st, 1985, something changed. A small, unnatural object flickered across the screen. It wasn't like the rocks and mud, it was man-made. As I arrived, more objects appeared, twisted pieces of metal, fragments of coal, a trail of ghosts, a faint, undeniable footprint of a decades-old disaster. This was it, the debris field we had hunted for. We followed the trail, documenting every piece of wreckage, knowing the great ship must be waiting. Suddenly, a massive circular object loomed out of the gloom. It was one of the Titanic's colossal boilers. There was a moment of stunned silence, then a quiet eruption of cheers and applause. This was the smoking gun. We had found the Titanic. Seeing that first boiler was a moment I will never forget. It was a direct physical link to the ship and its story. Following the direction indicated by the boiler, we continued our search. Then the seabed ahead of us began to rise. It was a wall of riveted steel plates. The bow of the RMS Titanic emerged from the darkness. The ship was upright, buried deep in the mud, its ghostly form covered in curtains of rust. It was a breathtaking, haunting sight. The ghost ship had finally revealed itself. As we began to explore the wreck with Argo, the initial thrill of discovery quickly gave way to a more somber and reflective mood. We were not just exploring a shipwreck, we were gliding over a grave site. The bow section was largely intact. As we moved further aft, the scale of the destruction became clear. The stern section was located nearly a third of a mile away, a twisted, chaotic mess of mangled steel. In all our exploration of the wreck site, we saw no human remains. However, we saw poignant reminders. We found pairs of shoes lying side by side on the seafloor. Each pair of shoes marked the spot where a victim had come to rest. The site was not a treasure chest, it was a sacred place. We made a conscious decision not to touch or recover anything from the wreck. Our discovery was not the end of the story but the beginning of a new chapter, transforming it from a myth into a real, tangible place that demanded our respect and protection. When the news of our discovery broke, it sent a shockwave around the globe. The story was front-page news in every country. People were mesmerized. It was a moment that connected the present directly to the past. The myth had become a tangible reality. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Suddenly we were at the center of a media frenzy. The discovery also reawakened the personal stories of the victims and survivors. Descendants of those who had been on the ship came forward. For many of them, finding the wreck brought a sense of closure. For years after the discovery, the public only knew half of the story. The secret military mission that made the expedition possible remained classified for over a decade. The real story was a tale of two missions. Mapping the Scorpion's debris field gave the insight that led directly to the Titanic. The two missions were inextricably linked. Revealing this then was impossible. The Cold War was still tense and submarine operations were highly sensitive. So we stuck to the official story to protect national security. Almost immediately after the discovery, a new and urgent concern arose: the protection of the wreck site. There was a real fear the site would become a target for treasure hunters and for salvage operations. This sparked a major international debate, spawning legal battles and public outcry. My position remained firm. The site should be treated as an underwater museum, but never touched. It led to calls for stronger international laws to protect historic shipwrecks. The Titanic was not a treasure to be claimed, but a solemn legacy to be honored and protected. The discovery of the Titanic was more than just the solution to a 73-year-old mystery. It showcased telepresence and inspired engineers and scientists to build advanced robotic systems for oceans and beyond. However, this icon is not permanent. The ship is slowly being consumed by its environment. Scientists estimate that within the next few decades the wreck may be reduced to a mere rust stain on the ocean floor. The legacy of the Titanic is therefore a dual one. It is a story of human ambition and failure, but it is also a story of discovery, perseverance, and the unquenchable human spirit of exploration. The ship itself may one day vanish, but its story, enriched and completed by its discovery, will endure. Its call echoing from the deep long after the steel itself has returned to dust.